there. It's good for salad the way it is, or just get on the spot. Oh, hello there, good people. Hi, I'm Jason with Green Country Agriforestry. Today I've got a special treat for you. This is a 6-gallon jug containing 1 gallon of vinegar, which we made up over the course of the summer. And here in this box, I have a 1 gallon jug to transfer it to. Now in a moment we'll get started and we'll show you how we went about making this vinegar. For right now, we get this box open and make sure that the jug that we're transferring it into is going to be intact. This vinegar can be used for making salad dressing and of course for purification of water. Back in the ancient days, before modern methods of water purification had been invented, vinegar was used to kill bacteria and potentially contaminated water. So, good, our jug's intact. That's exactly what we wanted to see. Got a little stopper here for it. Now, the path to making any kind of wine vinegar is, of course, making a wine. And to that effect, I've got some of my brewing supplies out, and I'm in the process of getting them washed down and sterilized and sanitized and all that good stuff. And I was going through and looking at my airlocks, and it turns out that my airlocks were all damaged or missing parts. So I had to run over to the brew supply shop and pick up some more. And while I was there, I picked up some specialty yeast for winemaking that should preserve those nice light floral notes. Now, a lot of people are surprised to hear that Redbuds are, well, for one, edible. And of course they are. The flowers are very edible and slightly sweet, particularly this time of year as they're getting ready to produce their little pea pods. Of course, the Redbud is a member of the Fabaceae family. So it is a leguminous plant, much like peas or chickpeas, lentils, beans, that sort of thing. Only, of course, it's a perennial, it's a tree. And the flowers are, as I mentioned before, edible, and they do have a certain amount of sugar content. And because they have a sugar content, we can use them to brew wine. So I have got my good old brew bucket out here. We're just giving it a good scrub down, and then we'll run some Star Sand through it and have a look at some of our brewing supplies. And then, of course, most importantly, get on the ladder and get out there and harvest some Redbud blooms. Alright, now it's time for me to go and gather some of these Redbud flowers. But since this tree has only got just a few blossoms on it, I'm going to have to take my professional quality extending stepladder and gather some blooms from one of the adult trees to put into my brew kettle here. After a few minutes, we've got a few blossoms, but we've got a long way to go. After about an hour's worth of work, I managed to secure about a gallon's worth of blossoms. There could have been more, and it's not the first time that I kick myself for having pruned the trees back so far last year. If the branches were a bit lower, they'd be a lot easier to reach. Okay, now I've got my flowers harvested and in the kettle here. I'm going to continue the processing here in the kitchen by adding water and bringing it up to just short of boiling, so right around 180 to 200 degrees. Plenty hot enough to sterilize everything, but not so hot that I risk losing some of the fragrant aroma of the flowers, which I want to maintain as I begin the brewing process. Now this is going to liberate the sugars, and it's going to eliminate the fragrance of the flowers. And once that's done, we will pour off the water and then add more water and run it through one more time to get all the last bit of essence out of those flowers, and then we'll discard the flowers themselves and continue on with the rest of the brewing process. Alright, so here we go. Okay, dokie, dokie, dokie. This is our first pass through with the redbud flowers. So basically we've made a redbud flower tea. Notice it's kind of pinkish. It's nice. Got some color in there, got some aromatics. And of course, we've liberated some sugars as well. 92, 91. Alright, that's around 90 to 95 degrees. We can now take our yeast. Open the package. Add that on in there. Give it a good stir. Of course, I'm going to need more than 1 gallon. I'm going to need about 6. Alright, so here we go. 1.5 gallons at a time. We pasteurize our juice and add it. Just like that. Alright. Now I've got all the juice in there. Mixing it together, we're hitting 150 degrees. We're going to let this cool for a little bit. We need it down to about 95 to 98 degrees before I add our yeast mixture back in. Alright, it's been several hours now. The sun's gone down. It's getting a little bit chilly outside. I've had the redbud juice with the yeast in it going for some time now. And you can see from that crest of foam up there on the top that it's been cooking really well. And we're going to take off the lid here to this bucket that we've had cooling for the past few hours and get a temperature reading here. We're at 97 degrees. Can you see that? There we go. So 97 degrees, that's warm enough for the yeast to like it and cool enough that the yeast won't get killed. We're just going to pour it in like so. And get a little bit of this in the cup. Just rinse the rest of that yeast out. There we go. Alright. That ought to do it. We've now inoculated our redbud wine. We know the temperature's good. I'm going to bring this inside and set it up someplace where it can maintain a 76, 77 degree temperature constantly for the next few weeks. So whenever this is going along really good, that airlock will be popping every 10 to 15 seconds or so. But after about a week or two, the airlock is slowed its movement down to maybe once every 30 or 40 seconds. So there's still living yeast in here, but most of the sugars are being consumed, or the yeast is dying off because the alcohol content is getting too high. In this case, there wasn't that much sugar in there to begin with, so they're actually running out of food to eat. And that's fine, but in the process of all of the reproductive cycles, the dead yeast is settling to the bottom. And if we allow that to sit there for too long, it's going to give your wine a funky flavor. If you're interested in drinking it, we'll probably drink a little bit, although it's mainly vinegar. So what we're going to do is transfer the wine and the living yeast out of the primary fermentation vessel into a secondary fermentation vessel, which you see right behind me. Now, before we get started doing any of this, we make sure we sanitize thoroughly all of the equipment we're going to use with Star San. This is a Brewing Supplies sanitizer. It's an acid sanitizer, and it does a really good job of getting rid of any nasty nasties that might be on this equipment that we're getting ready to use. Alright, so here's the big boy right here. This is a 6-gallon glass carboy. We're just going to put that right here. Alright, so let me describe the equipment. Transfer hose, and this device here is called a racking cane. It has a tip at the bottom, which is intended to capture, or not capture, it has a tip at the bottom here that prevents the sediment, the dead yeast, from coming back up into the tube as we siphon it off and into our secondary fermentation vessel. And then whenever it's all said and done, we're going to take this bung and cap the secondary fermenter and install fresh airlock in the secondary fermenter. And after a few minutes, the wine will finish transferring into the secondary fermenter, and we can proceed with the rest of our operation.
Hey, Gertie. No.
All right, take a glass. Okay, so at this point, since there still is living yeast in this culture, this is what you would call new wine. It still has living yeast in it. As opposed to the alternative, which is old wine, or Portia, as the Romans would call it. Portia is wine that is on its way to becoming vinegar. It's either fully matured or on its way to becoming vinegar, or in some cases is already vinegar. And traditionally it was used, at least by the Romans, to make sure that their water was purified. They would mix their wine, or Portia, with their water in order to make it safe to drink. This is what enabled the Roman legions to conquer most of the known world at that time. Because they could take any puddle of water they found and use that as a water supply, because they carried their wine with them.
That's kind of pretty. This is Redbud and what else? Oh,
You can grab your glass now.
Alright. There's going to be much yeast in here?
That'd be a little.
Didn't seem like very many bubbles popping up there.
Just hold your glass. Okay.
Oh, the ants are going to be all over the front porch now.
Now at this point, there is a little bit left in the vessel.
That's the dead yeast and stuff?
There's dead yeast and stuff in there. You wouldn't want to drink that. We've drawn a glass of the stuff out of here, and then you can notice the bubbles at the top indicating it's still fermenting. And we're going to take our bung and put it on the top of the carboy.
Oh, okay.
And then we're going to install.
What do you call it, a bong?
Bung.
Bung.
It's a bung. And we're going to install our airlock right in there.
I'm not sure about this.
Right.
You try it first.
Now we're going to move this into the house in a place where it can do its work and finish the fermentation process, which will be about another 2 weeks or so.
Are we get ahead of ourselves?
And in the meantime, we can have a taste. Yeah, you can taste the yeast in it.
Is this going to give us indigestion later?
As long as you don't drink too much of it. been several weeks since we started the Redbud wine. We've transferred it from the primary fermenter to this carboy and back and forth a few times. Each time removing the dead yeast from the bottom of the mix until we've got a product that is no longer fermenting. And you notice it's a lot it's a lot lower than it was to begin with. That's because we've taken a couple of gallons of this off and bottled it up, and that's drinking wine. Mary likes to drink a little light wine. And I'm left with about a gallon left here at the bottom. And now we're going to go ahead and turn that into vinegar. There's a couple of ways you can do it. You could leave the airlock off and allow the wild bacteria to come in, find your mixture, start reproducing. As a matter of fact, I transferred this to this container a couple of days ago, and the primary fermenter that was in has been allowed to be open to the air. It has already formed vinegar inside the primary fermenter out of the small amount that was left at the bottom. Every time I do a transfer, I leave a small amount behind. That way I don't transfer any sediment. Makes a nice, cleaner tasting product. But in this case, I want to keep it controlled, a controlled environment, and only be growing Acetobacter and not what other wild bacteria might have wandered in. So we're going to start out with a bottle of apple cider vinegar of some variety that has mother of vinegar in it. I can see the floating sediment at the bottom. That's the mother of vinegar. Hopefully there'll be some, let me bring this up to the camera. Okay, so we have the product here. You can see the dark shadow at the bottom. That is the sediment containing hopefully some live Acetobacter. We're going to try to get those involved in that gallon right there. Okay. To avoid just completely wasting the vinegar, we're going to pour it off into a container to capture it. Very, very slowly so that the sediment remains in the bottle. Okay, I've got my vinegar I can use for barbecue sauce later on, and I've got the bit of mother of vinegar down here at the bottom, hopefully with some live Acetobacter. That's bacteria that consume alcohol and produce vinegar. And we're just going to shoot that in to the tank along with everything else. A little bit of sediment here at the bottom. Let's go ahead and get that off. Put all of that in there. Alright, and now a different kind of fermentation is going to happen where the Acetobacter start consuming the alcohol and producing vinegar. And already the airlock is popping. Look at that. That's fast. That's some fast action right there. So right now, our Acetobacter, newly introduced to our culture, are busily gobbling up the alcohol in the wine and transforming it into vinegar. And I know they look an awful lot alike, but this is apple cider vinegar. We'll save this for making some barbecue sauce later on. And this here will be our Redbud wine vinegar. We can use that for making salad dressing or really anything else you need vinegar for. And we'll come back and check up on this here in another couple of weeks or so after it quits making carbon dioxide. Let us know that the vinegar is done. Alright, so here we go. 1 gallon vinegar. a little bit left over.
Came out a pretty color.
Alright. Now you can wash this out, sanitize it, it'll be ready for the next brewing project. And we got a little cork to put on that, like so. But we're going to find out if it really did turn into vinegar.
He's gonna drink it.
By pouring a little sample.
I almost spilled a little sample.
Well, that tastes like vinegar to me. What do you think, Mary?
Yeah.
Hmm?
I can smell it from here. That's right. Okay, this is what Jason's looking at.
Ooh. Yep. Well, you might want to turn to Well, good people, that's all I've got for you today. If you found this video informative or entertaining, well, you know what to do. I will catch you next time. Ooh.
Oh, smell you later. That was horrible. Yeah, it's probably better that way.
It's much better in a salad.